Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today in the Dungeon Dive, I am going to present to you a comprehensive overview / guide for the Hexplore It game series / game system. This video will be discussing 6 topics for the 6 sides of a hex. Topic number 1 will be an overview of what these games have to offer. Topic number 2 will be some general thoughts on how this company handles its crowdfunding campaigns. Topic number 3 will be the new campaign systems, such as the Clicks Madness for Volume 1 and the upcoming campaign system for Volume 2, the Forests of Adrimon. 3 will be the main part of this video, and that is a brief analysis of the pros and cons of each volume. Topic number 4 is going to be a very brief discussion on one house rule that I always play with. And the final topic will be addressing some common criticisms that people have of the Hexplore It games. Now, I am not trying to sell you on these games. That is not the point of this video. I had a Dungeon Dive viewer suggest that I make this video right now because of the ongoing campaign for the expansion of Forests of Adrimon, and I thought that would be a good idea. I never take payment. Hexplore It is not paying me for this video. I only present things to you all that I find interesting or things that I hope I have something interesting to talk about. So the point of this video is just to offer up some information, and you can use that information in however you choose. So let's get right to it. The first topic is kind of an overall, just a really broad overview of what kind of game Hexplore It is. The Hexplore It game system is an overland hex crawl. You are creating a character or a group of characters, and you are moving around a fantasy land trying to stop an evil from taking over. They're pretty basic games at a high level. What this system has to offer is, 1, a huge number of character options. Each one of these volumes has a number of different races, a number of different roles and traits that you can combine to create unique characters. I'm not sure what the number is up to now, but it's like 1 million or something different combinations of races, roles, and traits. And all of those things will have different powers, different abilities. And the main thrust of the game is building your character, building your character's power as the game goes. If you like games with a lot of character options and a lot of different ways to build and put together your characters, you will probably like Hexplore It. Each of the games is a huge open world to explore. These are sandbox hex crawls at some of their finest. These are some of the best examples of the hex crawl subgenre of adventure games. You can build your maps at the beginning of the game, or you can build them as you go, and each map has different hexes you will be exploring. There are different icons on the hexes to represent different things. You will be heading out solving quests, fighting bosses, all in this very, very huge sandbox world to have fun in. Think of these games as those kind of open world video games that we all love so much, just on a tabletop. There are different ways to play the games. Volumes 1, 2, and 3 include ways to play the game as one versus many. Somebody can take the role of the main boss and fight the other players. The main way to play these games is solo or co-op. Of PvE, the players against the environment. Volume 4, Domain of Mirrors and Noctis, which is just off camera here, introduces a dungeon crawl mode. Volume 1, Volume 2, and all of the other volumes are introducing new campaign systems. The games in the base box are one and done, 0 to hero. You play one game and that's it. That's the way I prefer. But for people who like huge campaigns, you are going to be taken care of as each volume gets expanded. Each volume is an expansion for the subsequent or previous volumes. So when you buy volume 1, you can use a bunch of the stuff from volume 1 in volumes 2, 3, and 4, and vice versa in any combination. You can combine all of your volumes to make these huge sprawling games. I probably would recommend that. You would have to have a giant table, but you can take things from each volume in a kind of modular fashion and add those to other volumes to create a very customized way to play your games. Okay, topic number 2. Let's talk about the general crowdfunding campaigns that the Hexplore It guys offer. I really do like the way that they handle their campaigns. They are usually pretty straightforward, but as more games are being introduced to the system, it starts to be a little complex, and that's kind of what I'm hoping this information that I'm providing you today, that you can use it to navigate that system. So right now, there is a campaign going on as of this is the beginning of April 2023. I think there will be about 20 days left in the campaign after I post this video, but there is a campaign for the Forest of Adrimon going on right now that is adding a huge kind of choose your own adventure style campaign system to the base game, as well as some various decks of cards that it is offering to add some more art to the game and to add some more things that you can use while you are playing that campaign system. What I recommend is that you find one of the volumes that appeals to you, and hopefully I will present the kind of information that you can use to make that decision today. And I pick one volume and buy everything available for that volume. I think that is the best way to handle that rather than buying a whole bunch at once or maybe buying just the base boxes. I recommend buying everything available for one volume at a time. Now, one volume usually consists of the following things. You have one base box game, you have one large box expansion, and depending on the volume, you have a couple decks of cards that you can add to it. The decks of cards are entirely optional. In the first 3 volumes, one of the decks of cards that you can get is an illustrated encounter deck. And these decks replace the original encounter decks found in volumes 1, 2, and 3. And what they do is they just add some art to them. One of the criticisms that we'll talk about later in this video is the lack of art on some of the decks of cards in these games, and they have been addressing that by adding these new illustrated encounter decks. Now, starting with volume 4, and I would probably guess volumes 5 and 6, they do not have the illustrated encounter deck as a separate purchase because they are already included in the base game. Another one of the decks that you can buy as a supplement is the living card deck. So these are a little complex to describe, but in each of the volumes, in the decks of encounter cards and quest cards that you will find as you are exploring the game, there are 3 different cards, and each one of those has a QR code on it. And you can scan that QR code with your phone, and it will take you to a website that they update 12 times through the year. 1 year, they offered up 12 different cards per QR code. It's weird. I've never seen another game do this, but it's kind of an interesting way to offer up to make one card be 12 different cards by just allowing you to access that information online. However, if you don't want to add technology to your games, you can simply buy physical copies of those cards. And each one of the living card decks comes with 3 different kind of sub decks that you can use. One of the QR codes will lead you to the Peril deck, and this is a deck that has some really powerful encounters that will really devastate you while you are playing the game. Another one of those QR codes will lead you to a 12-part complex quest that you will work through one card at a time to tell a kind of complete story. And another one of those quests will just lead to a number of different 12 different quests that you can add to your game. And so I like to add these as physical components to my game, just so I don't have to mess around with the website and the QR codes scanning. But both of these are entirely optional. You can access this information online. You do not need to purchase this. Just if you want the physical component, purchase this. And the encounter decks are replacements for what is already in the base game. If you just find that the base game cards look a little dull, you may want to get these illustrated cards. Now, the new campaign, the campaign that's going on right now, the crowd sale campaign, is for Forests of Adrimon. And that is specifically to add the new campaign system. So this leads us to topic number 3, the campaign system. So Volume 1 already has its campaign system released. This was crowdfunded along with Volume 4 of the game. And this is called Clicks Madness. So they are adding a similar book to Volume 2. They will have a campaign system for each of the volumes in this series. Clicks Madness and the other campaign systems are huge, absolutely enormous, are absolutely enormous choose your own adventure style, complex choose your own adventure style campaign systems. So first things first, I still have not played Clicks Madness. I really do want to. I just haven't made the time for it, but it is something that I am really looking forward to. Now, you may be asking yourself, why am I looking forward to this campaign system when I typically do not enjoy campaign style games? I love the Hexplore It system because it is one and done. It is a 0 to hero style game. The reason I am looking forward to using this campaign system is that I already know that I love the base games. I love Valley of the Dead King. I love Forest of Adrimon. I love Domain of Mirza Noctis. I know it's a good system. I have fun playing it. The campaign is just an additional way to enjoy a game I already enjoy. It's not the focus of the game. It is a new focus of the game. It is also a creative repurposing of components we already have. If you have already purchased Valley of the Dead King and you would like to continue to play with the things you already own, the things that are already taking up space on your shelf, you can very easily add a completely new way of playing just by adding a book that's about the size of a big hardback role-playing book. And these books add so much variety to the game. They are absolutely overflowing with different paragraph encounters. There are different chapters, and you will be exploring the world as you go, and the world map will get bigger and bigger. There are special custom encounters depending on what characters you are playing. So you have these your choices really do make a big difference. From what I have seen and what I have read, I've read the rules in the campaign and I've read some example paragraphs. Things seem to be very well written and interesting. I like the execution. And from everything that I have heard from people who have played through Clicks Madness, it is excellent. I have not heard a single bad thing about this system. I think this company really does make high quality things. And I trust them when they present this campaign. I already have the trust in their system and in the other things that they have made to know that I am in good hands. And I'm pretty sure I am going to enjoy that. Okay, now let's get into the biggest topic of the 6 topics we're talking about today. And that is a brief analysis of each of the volumes of Hexplore It. And let's start with the only volume that I no longer own. And that is Volume 3, The Sands of Shurax. I do still have this poster though, so I have something to show, and I do still have the illustrated encounter deck for this volume because I thought I might want to keep this as an additional set of cards that I could mix into some of my other volumes to have a few more different kinds of encounters. Like I said earlier, each one of these games is an expansion for the other volumes. So there are things that you can mix and match if you don't mind the mixing and matching of settings and themes. So I no longer own Sands of Shurax, and Sands of Shurax is the only volume in this series so far that I do not like. The reasons I do not like it might be things that you really do appreciate. So I'm going to talk about 6 things that I don't like about Sands of Shurax. And those things may be things that draw you to this volume. Number 1, It is by far the most complex of all of the volumes released so far. Number 2, it has 4 very different win conditions, and I never really knew when to commit to one over the others, and it was very easy to commit to one and then have something happen that was completely out of my control to render that win condition impossible to achieve, thus turning an already long game into something much longer. Number 3, I did not like the way that the map was sprawled out. I didn't like traversing the map. The map system was a little different in Sands of Shurax, and it just wasn't something that I appreciated. Number 4, it has a reputation system that was very fiddly and kind of cumbersome, and I don't think it added much to the overall feel of the game. Number 5, they simply upped the complexity of every single thing about the game, and that added complexity didn't add any fun for me. Number 6, and this is purely subjective, I am also not a very big fan of desert settings in games. That even stems to video games. Whenever I get to the chapter in Diablo or Diablo 2 or 3, the desert environment, I'm always like, oh great, I'm going to have to spend a whole bunch of hours in this setting that is nothing but like brown or red. It's just something personal. And you might really love a desert setting. And if you love desert settings, you're going to love Sands of Shurax because boy howdy is it a lot of desert. You will be traversing through very deadly desert terrain and having to deal with the kinds of things that a deadly desert terrain offers. So those are the reasons why I don't really love Sands of Shurax, but those are reasons why you might particularly love Sands of Shurax. So now we're going to jump from my least favorite to my most favorite. Okay, from Volume 3, Sands of Shurax being my least favorite, we will now move into my most favorite, and that is Volume 1, The Valley of the Dead King. The main reason why this is my favorite is that it offers me everything that the other volumes do with the fewest rules. It's the most simplistic and direct, and for me, it is the most fun because of that. So in the Valley of the Dead King, you will be creating a party of heroes, or you can try it with a single hero, and you will be going out trying to stop the Dead King from taking over the land. The plots of these games are pretty basic. And this says, travel across the map, earning power-ups by completing quests and battling opponents of multiple types. Move carefully to avoid many dangers and travel from city to city, visiting shrines and ruins along the way. Gain power quickly, for the Dead King also moves. He destroys the cities while you frantically gather the power necessary to stop him. For each city the Dead King destroys, he gains more power. So the Valley of the Dead King, I have everything from the base game and the big box expansion in this single box. I do love that most of this stuff does fit in the box. The things that do not fit in the box are the 2 additional decks of cards. So we do have the living card deck for Volume 1 and also the additional or the illustrated encounter deck that replaces the encounter deck in the base game here, with some absolutely lovely art. If you are a big fan of modern fantasy art, the art in the Hexplore It games is quite good. So Volume 1 does have a pretty strict timing mechanism, and that is something that I am of 2 minds about. I don't typically like timing mechanisms in board games, timers that just make things that kind of speed up the game, but the games already take so long that I kind of appreciate the timing mechanism in Valley of the Dead King just because it does keep things moving forward. It does keep things progressing. And when we get to the house rule part of this video, we will talk about a way that you can mitigate the timing mechanism. But in this game, you will be exploring different cities, and you will be trying to stop the Dead King from taking over those cities. You will be exploring different shrines and different places like the Black Market to find more powerful items. You will be fighting against all kinds of strong bosses like the Giant Basilisk, or maybe the Cryovern, the Frost Jarl. sorry for the reflection. These are all, I should have mentioned, these are all, a lot of the components in this game are dry erase placards, dry erase cardboard. And so they have this shine to them that makes it kind of difficult to to show on screen here. But one of the best things about Valley of the Dead King is just the huge number of races and roles and traits that this provides in the base game with the expansion, because you can use all of those in all of your other volumes. I did print out this page here that shows just how many more roles are in Valley of the Dead King than the other 3 volumes. How many more races are in Valley of the Dead King. So this acts as a really, really good expansion for your other volumes. And the races are here. So you have this huge number of races that you can pick from. And from Morlocks and Pixies, Dragonkin, Lizardmen, halflings, gray dwarfs, ogres, shades. So it's a really good mix of kind of typical fantasy races along with some more exotic races there. So you will choose a race. You will then choose a role, things like brutes or vagabonds or wilders. Each of the roles is in a subcategory. You have things such as sappers and strikers and utility and healers and that kind of thing. And then each of the expansions also adds a thing called traits. And these traits can be used to further augment and further customize your character by adding special things to the combination of races and roles. So there are all kinds of different ways to customize your character and to build your character and to make your characters unique and powerful. Now, volumes 1, 2, and 3 do have what I consider to be a pretty big negative in terms of solo play and in terms of the expansion. So the expansion, the big box expansion for volumes 1, 2, and 3 add a certain number of components like an entire deck of cards and a few chits that are used only when you are playing the additional one versus many mode. So if you are only a solo player or you only play co-op and you buy the expansion, just know that you will be paying for some things that you will never use and never see. So that is kind of a bummer. Volume 4, The Domain of Mirza Noctis, it does not offer a one versus many role. So when you buy the expansion for that, you are only getting new things to play co-op and new things to play solo. And the things that expansion adds to that game really do change the co-op and solo mode of that game. However, there is one thing that volumes 1, 2, and 3 have that volume 4 does not have. And that is the addition of this storybook. The storybooks in volumes 1 through 3 act basically as a travel and lore guide. They don't really add any kind of gameplay mechanisms to the game, but they add a new way of experiencing the world and the lore as you play. As you can see in these storybooks, there are various icons that you can find on the map while you are exploring. When you land on one of these icons, you are supposed to then take the storybook and find that thing in the storybook, and then you can read a little bit about the world. You can read about the lore, you can read about the different settings, you can read about the history of places, of items, and things as you are playing the game. Now, I applaud the concept, but in my opinion, the execution was a little bit lacking. It was a way to have more lore and narrative in the games, but at the cost of time spent finding and reading what you needed to find and read. I could see this working pretty well as a solo player because you can take your own time to do this, but the games are already very long, and I think playing co-op with other players to add this whole new sector of time spent while playing can make things be kind of excruciatingly long. Some people missed the storybook aspect from Volume 4. I didn't miss it that much because I think Volume 4 does a better job of incorporating this stuff into its core game experience. But if you are somebody who likes to really take their time and dive into the lore and into the backstory and into the world building of the games that you are playing, you might want to focus on volumes 1, 2, or 3 of Hexplore It so you can have access to this story book. Okay, now let's talk about my next favorite volume, and that is volume 4, The Domain of Mirza Noctis. Let's take a look at the back of this box here. This box is absolutely huge. So this says, Krasvatelia, the sun sets on this cold and desolate place. Make your way across the scarred land to investigate the workings of a terrible blood mage who has spent decades cultivating and collecting the blood of innocents. So volume 4 is not nearly as complex as volume 3, The Sands of Shurax, but is a little bit more complex than volume 2, Forest of Adrimon, and even a little bit more complex than volume 1. However, it is very simple in terms of how you win. There's only one win condition, and that is to kill the evil vampire. Volume 4 does add one thing that I really love, and that is a little dungeon crawling mini game. Throughout the world of Mirza Noctis, you will find tombs, and you will find places that you can delve into and have complete little mini dungeon crawls. And these are an underground layer that actually connects over overland spaces. It's like a tunnel system that you can use, but there are its own deck of cards and its own monsters, and the dungeon has its own main boss. So it's like this whole other separate world that you get to explore while you are playing. That turns this game into one of my kind of dream concepts of a game. And that is a game that combines hex crawling in an overland world with more detailed dungeon exploration. You can also use the dungeon elements in this game with previous games. So when you buy Domain of Mirza Noctis, you also get a little module, a dungeon module that you can plug into other games. And the way that you do that is detailed in this Play Styles book. Each of the volumes has a book or has a section in the rules about different play styles. And this tells you everything you need to know on all of the various ways to play the game. There are ways to make the games faster by doubling up all of your rewards, playing with multiple heroes, playing with one hero, splitting groups. They did start to actually add some rules on splitting groups. So if you are playing co-op and some of your players want to go off and do their own thing, I've never actually played like that. There are ways to make the games even longer if you want to further explore and just have a very kind of long and game full of exploration where you get to really explore everything. There's a bounty hunter mode. There's ways to make the dungeons more powerful. And then also, again, ways to incorporate the dungeons into your other volumes and also combining the various volumes into a kind of Uber game. Each of the systems also has this Valor system, which is kind of like an achievement system in a video game where you can do certain things while you are playing to unlock bonuses that you can use in subsequent games. So it's almost kind of like a legacy style element to the game, but you don't have to destroy anything. You can just keep adding to it. You can keep track of the Valor points that you've unlocked and what those correspond to while you are playing. So there are a lot of different play styles, as I mentioned before. I think one of the things besides the dungeon crawling mode that I appreciate most about the Domain of Mirza Noctis is its theme, is this horror setting. If you are somebody who really likes Castlevania a lot, like I like Castlevania a lot, or maybe like Dark Souls, I think you will really appreciate the horror setting of Domain of Mirza Noctis. It does make the game feel unique, and I think it really does sell that setting and its theme of blood. Blood is used in everything. You know how Bloodborne, the concept of blood and how blood was used in a variety of ways for different factions, was a core element of that game. And I think Domain of Mirza Noctis handles that really well. That is awesome. This kind of like Skaven, this Scourge Eater. So this is a healer, one of the healer roles that you can play. Man, I just love the way that this stuff looks in these games. It is so cool. But this has some very interesting characters. It has a great theme. I love the horror setting, this kind of really dark and twisted, almost Victorian horror setting. And I like the roles, I like the races, I like the dungeon crawling. So Domain of Mirza Noctis really does offer up a whole lot to like. Okay, now let's go to my third favorite, and that is Forest of Adrimon. So some of you may not like the horror theme, the horror setting of Domain of Mirza Noctis, and you might want something that is more of a traditional fantasy. If you want something that is more of a traditional fantasy setting and theme, the Forest of Adrimon might be the game for you. Let's take a little look at the back of the box here. And it says, journey through the mysterious and overgrown Greenfire Forest. Search for gear and supplies in cities that have been completely lost to the Magi, a terrible sorceress who has the power to control others. Make your way across the forest to destinations where powerful fragments lay. The journey to one of the old battle sites and forge the relics anew. Battle through a variety of encounters while traveling, or move carefully and see what other discoveries you might find. So one thing about Forest of Adrimon that I really do love is the way the map looks. And I think this one has perhaps the best kind of sandbox feel. The way that you need to go out and explore the land to find these relics, to craft these relics, to do battle against the evil Magi is interesting. It really does feel like you are playing an open world video game where you can go out and just explore and discover things as you are playing. Here is Adrimon the Magi. And so this is the placard that is used when you are playing the one versus many version. But again, you do have, there's the player, the PvE version of Adrimon there, the Magi. So these are all of your different bosses. This one does not have as many character classes and races and roles as Volume 1, of course, but it does have some interesting things going on. I don't have a lot of individual things to say about Volume 2. It is a perfectly fine entry into the series. I just don't happen to like it as much as Volumes 1 and 4. The reason I place it third is that I get the same feeling from Volume 1, but Volume 1 is a little more simplistic. And so it's easier for me to get into the fun. And this volume it doesn't have as many character options as Volume 1. It also doesn't have that great theme and setting that I personally love from Volume 4, that kind of Castlevania horror setting, and it doesn't have the dungeon crawling. So it's just missing a few things that I really like about the other two volumes, but it is a perfectly good game. This was my entry into the series, and once I played this, I knew I had to at least check out the others, and I'm really, really glad that I did. Forest of Adrimon is, of course, the focus of the ongoing campaign. They are adding a huge Choose Your Own Adventure campaign system to Forest of Adrimon. They are also adding new illustrated cards, so you can, of course, get your living card deck for Forest of Adrimon. You can get your illustrated encounter deck. And one of the other things that they are adding to this new crowdfunding campaign is an illustrated power-up deck. So as you solve quests, as you beat bosses, you will get power-ups. And those are a deck that basically just have a bunch of icons. They're really boring looking, but the new expansion material will add illustrations to all of those cards. So if you want to add some more art to your game, those options are available. But again, they are fully optional. You don't need them to play or enjoy the game. And also, Forest of Adrimon also does have that storybook that is found in volumes 1, 2, and 3, in case you want to play a game where your kind of main goal is just to go out and explore and learn about the world. This volume does have that option. Okay, so while we were discussing The Valley of the Dead King, Volume 1, I mentioned the fact that it does have a pretty strict timer. But there are ways to mitigate that. And one of the ways that I do use to mitigate that is through a house rule. And that house rule is going to be topic number 5. And this is the way that I play all of my games of Hexplore It. So you can play the main way you play the game is you have these various hexes, these large hexes that have smaller hexes. And as you get to the edges, you will be drawing random hexes to create your map as you play. The way I like to play these games is I set out my map at the very beginning of the game. I set up a map randomly each time, but I set up the map complete to solve a number of issues. One is I play on a small table, and so I like to know how much space the game is going to take up before I start playing. Two, I think it is a good way to mitigate the timer mechanism in Volume 1 because the main timer is the Dead King, the big bad. He is moving from city to city, trying to take over each city. And if he ever takes over all the cities, you lose. And as he takes over each city, he starts moving faster and faster. And so the timer starts to really snowball and it can get out of hand pretty quickly. If you set up the game at the beginning, if you set up the map at the beginning, you can make sure that there is a lot of distance from one city to the next. So it takes the Dead King longer to get from one city to the next. It's just a really easy way to mitigate that timer. I also think it makes sense thematically that my characters, the denizens of this world, would have a basic knowledge of the layout of the land. However, it doesn't completely destroy any element, or it doesn't completely destroy the element of exploration because the quests and the encounters that I am having are still randomly drawn from those decks. So for me, setting up the map at the beginning of the game is a win-win scenario. Okay, so the final topic today, topic number 6, are common criticisms that are frequently leveled against the Hexplore It system. And these are criticisms that I fully understand, but we're going to talk about each one. One is the lack of art. So when Volume 1 first came out, it was a huge turnoff for me, the lack of art. I disliked the lack of art on the cards. Even the map looked super bland. However, when they introduced the second edition, which the second edition is the only edition that you can buy now of Volume 1, they made the map look better and they kind of changed up things to make it have a little bit of more visual appeal. They are also addressing the lack of art on the cards by introducing the illustrated encounter decks, and now they are introducing the illustrated power-up decks. I'm really looking forward to seeing those. So you can solve the issue of the lack of art by spending some more money. Now, it is a shame that you have to do that to add the art, but know that it is entirely optional. You don't need the illustrated decks. Everything from those illustrated decks is in the games, but if you want that extra art, you are going to have to pony up some more money. Another thing that I hear people discuss a lot, and it is another thing that kind of kept me away from the game, and that is the name Hexplore It. I think it sounds kind of silly. I wish that they would just call them like the Valley of the Dead King, a Hexplore It game, a Hexplore It system game, or something like that. The use of the word hex kind of diminishes the theming of the game, I think, and they use that word a lot throughout. When you roll a 6 and you have an exploding die, that's called a hexploding die. There are super powerful race or roll combinations in the expansions, and those are called hexclusives. And also, I'm not quite sure why they don't call the expansions hexpansions to complete the circle of the puns. So yeah, the naming convention is kind of cheesy. However, there is one really, really easy way to get over that, and that is to ignore it. Don't worry about it. If you are avoiding these fantastic games, some of the best adventure games I have ever played, if you are avoiding those just because of the name, you are doing yourself a great disservice. In my very first video for Hexplore It, I talked about how I had to get over some of my preconceived notions about these games. And once I did, I'm so thankful that I was able to change my mind about these games because they have quickly grown to be some of my all-time favorite games. Another criticism is the games can be very long, and that is 100% true. Even as a solo player, you are looking at 3 or 4 hours for a complete game. Now, there are ways to speed up the game, such as one, using my house rule of setting up the map at the beginning. That way, you just kind of know where you need to go to solve your quests. There are also optional rules in each volume of playing faster games, but even with those rules, you are still looking at a very long game. I cannot even imagine how long this game must be if you're playing a full party of 4 players. I can see it going on for maybe like 6 or 7 hours. So just know that a game of Hexplore It is going to be a long and epic session. The games can also be pretty fiddly. There are a ton of rules scattered about. There are rules in books augmented by things in other books and augmented by things in other placards. There are items and things only mentioned in the expansion rulebooks that aren't on the placards. And while I totally get this is a legit complaint, I also think that it oddly fits with the overall themes of these games. In these games, we're supposed to be explorers in a world, and we are supposed to be discovering things as we go. So we may not know exactly what each settlement has to offer. I don't think we, the players, are meant to instantly know everything about the world. But as we play, we start to remember and we start to gain knowledge of the world, just like our characters are gaining knowledge as they are exploring the land. So just know that you will be playing mini games where you will get things wrong, you will forget things, and you will mess things up. But that's perfectly okay. Because more than anything, the Hexplore It games are they're very close to RPGs. And if you play them solo, they are very close to solo RPGs. You can have a very, very good time playing these games, even if you get a whole bunch of the rules wrong. Because the focus on these games, the core experience is all about exploring, and it's all about having that building that emergent narrative and having just a great time with the random encounters and how you can connect the dots and move around the map and build your character. The mechanisms are kind of secondary. The mechanisms are strong. The core rules are strong, but there is a lot of things to mess up, a lot of things to get wrong. And I doubt I will ever play a game of Hexplore It where I am doing things 100% correctly. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this comprehensive overview of the Hexplore It system. I hope I provided you with some valuable information that you can use if you are wanting to dive into these games and just check out what they're all about. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.